A lot of people use AI for reference images. I mean, why would you want to use a boring real picture of a lion when you could use this beautiful generation where his back leg is his front leg and his foot is made of Play-Doh? Hey everybody, it's Lavender Town, and my AI poisoning video had the AI stands completely crashing out in the comment section, so we're going to respond to some of their points while making a bunch more poisoned art, damaging the datasets of any AI that tries to scrape them. Let do it, and you will found it effect nothing. You can't fight it, no matter how hard you try, and you have no idea what is coming. One of the most common reactions I got on my poisoning video was basically, lol, it doesn't work, or they've already broken this. I got so many comments about it, I really started to worry that I had missed something in my initial research. However, though I found many random social media posts that confidently claimed this, I couldn't find a single reliable source that did. I also found that in many of those posts, the reason they believed it didn't work was because of a fundamental misunderstanding of the technology. This user claimed that a 1% Gaussian blur filter could disable both glaze and nightshade, but blur filters are one of the many edits that nightshade is completely impervious to. In fact, the more I dug in, the more evidence I found that nightshade is a current threat to data scrapers. MIT Technology Review had an article from only a few months ago that pointed out that this technology has been rigorously peer-reviewed, has not yet been broken despite being open source according to data security specialists, and is constantly being improved. On top of that, when asked for comment, OpenAI referred to Nightshade as a type of abuse that they're trying to make their systems more robust against, while Midjourney and Stability AI stayed completely silent on the topic, which I personally wouldn't expect them to do if they could brag that their product was safe from it. So overall, the sources online that say Nightshade works are tech security experts, MIT scientists, and indirectly even OpenAI, whereas the people who say it doesn't are the Redditors of r/defending AI art. So I would take the sources of this information into consideration. Other people say that Nightshade works, but that it's too late because many generators have already been trained on so much data. But in the Forbes article on AI model collapse, they make it clear that without a constant stream of high-quality human content, AI model collapse is inevitable. Artists take inspiration from artists all the time. If those real people don't have to give credit to every artist they took inspiration from, then neither does AI. The fact remains that originality doesn't exist. It's something every type of artist knows and has known for a century. Dude, I missed the part in history class where 1920s flappers discovered that originality doesn't exist. Anyway, this is the argument that AI training on people's copyrighted work is exactly the same as a human being getting inspired by other artists. To help explain why this is not really the same thing at all, I'm actually going to talk about Split Fiction, a game that came out. This is not sponsored. This is a game I played on my own time, but I found that Split Fiction was kind of making the greatest, most obvious argument against why, aggregating different people's creativity into a machine and having it spit out what it's trained on is not the same as human creation. So in the story of Split Fiction, it's about two writers who get invited to this tech company who says they're going to publish their work. They end up in this pod kind of thing, and then later they discover that this company is actually trying to extract all of their ideas, not just the ones they submitted to be published, and they're going to try to make a machine that can make masterpieces at the touch of a button for this corporation. So it's pretty clearly an analog for AI image generators, or all the AI that scraped tons and tons of copyrighted novels and were trying to make their own AI novels based on that. The thing that's interesting is throughout the story, I won't spoil anything, but the characters pretty quickly get to know each other by spending time in each other's stories via the stories that they're telling. The characters and the events that happen inside of their stories are imbued with things that actually happen to them, problems that they're going through. These are the types of things that happen when humans make art. And when you take these stories and the symbols away from the author, they start to lose a lot of meaning. There are so many tiny decisions that you make when you're writing a story or making an image that your subconscious is leaking through and putting in texture and soul that you're not even consciously aware of. I actually have an example of this myself. When I was designing the World of Unfamiliar, my graphic novel, I kept finding myself drawing these orange hills in the background. And if you had asked me when I was first starting the comic why I was doing that, what those were there for, I couldn't have told you. I think I probably would have said something like, well, my main character's kind of cool tone, so the orange helps offset that. The hills, they just look cute and round, kind of like the shape language of my character. It wasn't until after the book had been published that I realized I was drawing these hills. This is the Palouse, this is where I grew up. The wheat fields around where I grew up turned this beautiful rolling orange color. I was replicating my home. There were so many choices in my graphic novel that I made because of things I had been through, places I had been, the life that I had lived. And that is what makes art so compelling, and that is why art is always unique. Even when you're heavily inspired by something, as a human being, you will naturally start to change it as you create something yourself. For example, cult classic Firefly was extremely heavily inspired by Star Wars. However, by the end of you watching Firefly, it is very clearly its own thing. But if you ask an AI image generator for Star Wars, guess what you get? You get this. It's Star Wars. It's just more Star Wars. After the AI has been inspired by somebody else's work, you don't even need to say the title of the work or the artist to get exactly something that it has already seen. And guys, without a reference image, I would not be able to recreate these images. However, the AI can, which really does make the argument that the way that it's training the data is so detailed that it really gets more into copyright infringement. I mean, look at this Dune screen cap. Does this seriously look like what happens when a human is inspired by Dune the movie? Or does it look like a machine just like blindly spitting out something that it's seen before? This is the beautiful thing about the art community. Everybody has an opportunity to put their own link on this chain of getting inspired and inspiring others. When I was young and I would see art that I thought was really cool, I would learn who the artist was. I would absorb tons and tons of their art, and I would be very vocal about the fact that they were inspiring me. I have literally answered in interviews probably 1,000 times all the different artists that really inspired me to start drawing and keep drawing. But when AI gets inspired, it actually does much of the opposite. Rather than giving an opportunity for someone to discover new artists through the artists that they're looking at, when they're looking at AI art, the AI is actually making it harder for you to find out where this style came from, where these influences came from. For example, the dark fantasy art trend on TikTok from about a year ago. This is really heartbreaking to me because so many people were seeing these pieces and looking for stuff that reminded them of the style, because to them, this art has no owner, it has no origin. But as we know, the way that AI generators train, this is the culmination of probably multiple artists' real hard work. And we have no way of finding out who they are now. And I think that that's disgusting, honestly. Like, people are actively looking for similar stuff, for more of this, and they can't find it because it's hidden behind this stupid prompt. Luckily, there are some people who are well versed enough in these artists still that there are some good guesses, but this is obviously damaging to the art community and to human culture in general. So let's talk about generating AI for reference images for your art. So here is an image I got off the front page of Midjourney's website. This is an image that they're proud of. When you first look at it, it looks pretty good, right? Like, it looks like a nice illustration. However, if you look closely like you would if you were using it for reference, you quickly see that all the details you would look up a reference image for are complete nonsense. They're just mush, even now, even after they've made all these improvements. Like, The first thing that jumped out at me was the buttons. The buttons on his waistcoat make absolutely no sense. Like, they're not actually buttoning anything in most cases, especially that weird button that's like off center on the far side of his vest panel. There's also two on the other side that don't seem to be doing anything either, and the closer you look at the buttons, the worse they look. Like, they just look like blobs. They're not uniform shapes. They have different line weight. Whereas when you pull up a real image, like I just looked up like a Victorian suit, or like dark academia waistcoat, whatever it is you're looking for, you'll see that the reference image is so much more useful because everything makes sense because it's real. You can actually check how the buttons not only sit on the body, but also how they affect, the tension of the clothing. You have so much useful information here because this is real, whereas this AI image is just full of stuff that doesn't make sense. And if you use it as a reference, like, best case scenario, you ignore it. Worst case scenario, you put those mistakes into your own work. So I'm going to outline around the boot that the rabbit is wearing in our AI reference, and then I'm going to outline around the forms of this real image of a similar boot that I was able to find. And then we're going to just look at the forms and see which one makes more sense as a reference image. Again, it was very easy to find these actual real photos. You just, type in what you're looking for and you will find real images. You'll see that when I outline the boot that the rabbit was wearing, there's clearly some forms of like a tennis shoe in there. It's just all melted together, and it also was much harder for me to actually see those forms because everything is so blurry. It's trying to look painterly, so it's even harder than using a real image to extract information from. I also showed how I would use a reference of a real button versus the AI button, and as you can see, the AI button doesn't look like anything, so it's not actually useful in this case. And I found countless more examples of this, like this person who isn't actually holding the spear and whose hand is at the wrong angle. So that's one of the things I would really need reference image for, like seeing someone holding something is one of the hardest parts of the drawing, and this reference would not help me with that. This anime girl in a field of flowers, when you look close at her hand, you realize it is totally melting into her neck. So this pose, which is kind of one of the more difficult parts of this image, you would not be able to use it as reference because it's so messed up. I truly don't understand why you wouldn't just Google images like this rather than generating something like this, where the lion's back leg is also its front leg and its ear is melting into its mane and his feet look like this. How is this useful as reference? I don't get it. This literally got fixed by AI devs within a couple days, by the way, so your efforts are worthless. Luddites always lose. So we already covered the idea that Nightshade doesn't work and was easily fixed. This guy's clearly still confused, but I wanted to talk about what he called me, which is a Luddite. Actually, the word Luddite came up a lot in the comment sections of that video. So if you don't know, a Luddite is basically someone who hates technology. That's the colloquial use of it. Respectfully and with love and light, this is just a really dumb criticism of my video, and it shows that a lot of people who are commenting don't know who I am. First of all, Nightshade is a very technologically advanced way to fight AI, so it doesn't really make sense for someone who's anti-technology to use it. A computer virus is also a type of technology, but I don't want it on my computer, and I'm gonna do what I can to prevent that, so does that make me anti-technology? I do game jams for fun. I'm a digital artist. I customize my own keyboard and built my own PC, and I learned how to do HTML and CSS when I was literally a preteen because I wanted my Gaia Online guild to look better. So I just think calling me a Luddite's a bit of a stretch. Lower cost of entry is not a bad thing. It gives more people the ability to express themselves and explore the world of art. I don't know where people get the idea that generative AI is lower cost of entry. If we're talking about literal cost, there's no way that a computer or a smartphone plus probably a monthly subscription that's going to cost you over $100 a year is going to be cheaper than a pen and some paper. I learned how to draw on computer paper, which you can get 500 sheets of for $9. So this is clearly not an economic thing. I find a lot of AI defenders try to couch their guilt in this matter by using like the language of social justice. They'll say that, oh, AI art is really good for people who are disabled. But conveniently, the people who are saying this don't do any disability activism, nor do they talk to any disabled artists. And they obviously don't know about all the incredible disabled artists who do make art themselves. So I find it pretty distasteful when people will use disabled folks as a way to defend their use of AI, even though they're able-bodied. It doesn't really make any sense. If you are a disabled artist, I would love to get your feedback in the comments, what you think about this issue, because I feel like a lot of people are talking about you guys and not including you in the conversation. So I would really like to hear from you if you're comfortable, and we might talk about that in a future video, but I just think it makes more sense to actually include your voices rather than just using you as a token in this argument. You're just stopping the inevitable. The programmers are just going to make that the AI recognize to poison itself and try to cure the poison on the art or simply use other people's art. So the last thing I want to talk about is this idea that AI image generation taking over is inevitable. And while I totally understand that perspective from both sides of the aisle, I honestly don't know if that's true. The first thing I think a lot of people don't understand is that as it is currently, AI is not actually profitable. It's being completely held up by investors who are excited about the chance that it might become profitable. But if AI loses those investors, in most sectors, it just can't support itself. In the summer of last year, Goldman Sachs released an economic report that already started to suggest that Gen AI is asking for too much money and not giving back enough benefit to the investors that are literally keeping it afloat. Here's a segment from an article that was released just yesterday on CNN Business. Apple, like every other big player in tech, is scrambling to find ways to inject AI into its products. Why? Well, it's the future. What problems is it solving? Well, so far, that's not clear. Are customers demanding it? Lol, no. In fact, last year the backlash against one of Apple's early ads for its AI was so hostile the company had to pull the commercial. Even when I see advertisements that are actively trying to convince me how useful and fun these AI are going to be, it seems like they're scrambling for use cases that no normal human would ever actually do.
This is the Google Pixel 9 with Gemini, and this is your friends making plans for the weekend. Let's see if Gemini can make an image of a group of llamas chilling by the pool, late afternoon, sunglasses, and palm trees. And just gonna drop this one right here. A lot of love for the pool. Whoa, looks like Lisa's also got some ideas for the weekend.
Like, is this not extremely cringy to you guys? I don't know if I just have like my hate blinders on, but the idea of generating an image of llamas in a bikini to drop in the group chat is just embarrassing. Like, this is not how people meme. This is not something people do. They made another ad that was basically the same exact concept, except it's like a guy like trash talking the fantasy football team of his friends, and he generates a literal image of someone's hands being butter to be like, I guess they dropped the ball or something. That's just not, like, this feels like something that like an alien who's never interacted with like other humans before would think that we want. Basically, tech makes a lot of promises about artificial intelligence, and a lot of the times they come up really, really short. They promise a cyberpunk sci-fi future and give us the trifecta of Cleverbot, Clippy, and whatever the hell this is. United Healthcare is getting sued for their AI implementation. Spotify's algorithm has completely fallen apart now that it's not human curated and instead is being done with artificial intelligence. Tesla's been telling us that we would have self-driving Teslas completely autonomous since like 2015, and that still hasn't happened. So in short, a lot of these generative AI projects are really coasting on potential, on dreams, and on hype. But even with billions and billions of dollars from these big investors and unlimited access to all the copyrighted material in the world, they're still failing to meet the promises that they've made to a lot of these investors and to the consumer. When you look up reporting about NFTs back in 2021, everyone is talking about NFTs in the exact same way. They're inevitable. They're the future. I remember back then when I criticized NFTs, people called me a Luddite as well, but the truth of the matter is that bubble burst within 2 years. Everything that people had been saying about it being the future and that it was inevitable was just marketing. So to the tech fans, I highly recommend that you guys look at the actual economic realities of the technology that you believe is the future, especially before you invest your own personal money into it, because otherwise you're going to end up spending way too much for shoddy products, get involved in crypto rug pulls, and any number of other scams. And to the artists, make sure you aren't letting the marketing make you feel hopeless. People turning memes Ghibli style is obviously ghoulish and horrible, but it's also not going to make back the billions big tech are pouring into this. And unlike us, investors aren't motivated by passion, they're just looking to make their money back. Without investors, the cost of this technology would fall on the consumer, and it honestly would probably be more expensive than hiring a person at that point. I think it's a little ironic seeing an artist using a digital drawing tool talk about how saving time using AI is soulless. So this is still a pretty pervasive belief that the jump from traditional art to digital is similar to the jump from digital art to AI, and that AI is just another art medium. To kind of illustrate my perspective on why this isn't true, I'm going to show you guys a side-by-side of me drawing digitally and me drawing traditionally. On the one side, I'm just in my sketchbook with my Blackwing pencil, and I'm going to use an alcohol marker. On the other side, I am drawing with my Apple Pencil on my iPad. Now, I definitely do think there are differences between these two mediums, that's for sure true. However, I do think that anyone who looks at these will be able to tell that in both these images, I am the creator of those images. My art style is still the same, and that's because I'm actually making this image myself. Even the motions I'm making with my hand are pretty similar. The biggest differences for me between digital and traditional are things like the tactility of the paper I'm using, the ability to use any color in digital versus being limited by my materials when it comes to traditional, and there are some time-saving tools that there aren't as easy of methods for in traditional that I have in digital, particularly the fill bucket, which I use all the time. I do sometimes wish for the transform tool when I'm working traditionally, though if I really feel like I need it, I will just take a photo of my traditional art and edit it, and then you still kind of get the benefits of both. Now here is a side-by-side of me typing in a Google image search and me creating a piece of AI art, and you will see that it is the exact same process. So what do you guys think? Alright, I'm going to post these poison art pieces various different places, and again, if they don't steal my art, they will not be harmed by this. Thank you so much for watching till the end. Let me know your thoughts on this topic below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much to my wonderful members and patrons, including Philip Verbicario, Celery Sticks, I'm a Potato, Prince Piplup III, Honey Kitten, Nee Nico, Novel Goblin, Loro, Dada, Lily McFarlane, Artist James, Skitten, Gold Pikachu, Clad, Songbird Galesworth, Sunshine, Whimsic, Asri Cryptid, Hoodle Doodle, River the Goblin, Raz Tarosh, Kobe Octo VTuber, Graveyard Moss, Grexius, Maddie Momo, The Midwestern Menace, CB, Lucy Amajiki, Live, Raven's Crow, Zocelot, T-Hill Music, Jabber Dabber Doo, Light Jewel, Kadaria, The Expressive Poker Face, Tsubaki, Cutie Pie, Ice Cream Pal, Kola, JJ Jade, and of course, Blah 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 Blah.